Garcia coming along. You had Brandon Rios.
Crawford.
He signed Crawford out of the 2008 trials.
Yep.
And I remember nobody would take Crawford when he signed him.
Really?
Yeah, so like top
pound for pound king now.
Top rank weren't interested.
Really?
Yeah, Golden Boy weren't interested.
Isn't that something interesting? Terence Crawford is now the, arguably pound for pound top 1 or top 2.
No one thought a kid out of Omaha, Nebraska could become a draw card.
Really?
And again, you go watch the fights, you've seen the tools in Crawford, but if you just follow the results.
Pay-per-view numbers, being the way they are around boxing recently. Why the Jesse Vargas fight rather than like Terence Crawford?
I tried to get Adrian Broner. The problem is he outpriced himself. And then after that, we thought the next best fight style-wise was Jesse Vargas. Jesse Vargas is a world champion, so what else do you want us to do?
No, he's a good fighter. It's just, boxing is a business, so with pay-per-view numbers being down, it's just, I feel like it's a valid question. You have a guy like Terence Crawford out there. I know he just fought recently, but that's what a lot of people wanted to see commercially. It probably would do better.
I don't like, Terence Crawford is a good fighter. He's a good kid, but his style is not a good style for Manny that's going to make an entertaining fight for the fans. And that's what we look at all the time, too, is a style. He has more of a style of a Floyd Mayweather, Terrance does. And look what the fans thought about the Floyd Mayweather fight. They didn't like it.
Yeah.
So we try to get somebody that is going to stand and go toe-to-toe and give an entertaining fight. That's what we did.
Okay. With that being said, as far as the Vargas fight goes, what's your overall take on this fight? And
only one that matters? I mean, seriously, Suleiman has to be rolling in his grave. Literally. I mean, it sounds like you're reading a script or something. Come on, you've been the ring mouthpiece and the chosen one since they came on board 2 years ago. We all know that. I mean, it looks like that monopoly money really got to your head. This is not the way champions behave. Once you start making money, you don't behave this way. Young fighters shouldn't be looking up to this. Any kid who becomes an amateur dreams of becoming a world champion and having a belt. The kids dream of becoming world champions like you did, Terrance. This is not the way to behave. Look, yes, there is an agenda with TKO. Yes, they want to create one belt, one entity to control the entire sport. But it's sad that they made you the mouthpiece? You of all people? I thought you had integrity. I thought you had respect for boxing and the sport. What do you think the Jose Suleiman Foundation does because of those sanctioning fees that you refuse to pay? You know what he does? He helps these kids get off the streets. He houses ex-fighters. That money goes into retirement funds. That money goes into paying hospital bills for fighters who can't make it. So just because you made it, Crawford, and you made $50 million, you don't want to pay that fee ever again? That is wrong. I'm very disappointed. Yeah, there's an agenda here by that TKO group. And I'm going to do everything in my power to do whatever I can to protect boxing. Because this is a sport that gave me everything.
They say the left hand, it drop mountains. They say the right hand, be slaying dragons.
all right, guys, so I'm patrolling the mean streets of San Antonio. We are here for Lamont Roach, Eastside Cruz fight week, but I still want to give you all that world-class content. I still wanted to speak to you guys and speak on this whole Terence Crawford thing because Terence Crawford came out with a whole series of tweets. He had a whole lot to say about things in his past, and you know, like, he's still unhappy about things from his past, and he's completed boxing. He's a three-time undisputed champion. He just cemented himself as one of boxing's true all-time greats, and he's still not happy. And I don't understand it because, like Terence Crawford likes to go on like he's some sort of victim. And truth be told, he's not a victim. Terence Crawford is not a victim, guys. This is the same Terence Crawford that, you know, when everyone was saying that Errol Spence was ducking him, like, the majority of the boxing world was on his side. The majority of the boxing world thought that Terence was the hero in that story. You understand? And when he knocked out Errol Spence, a lot of the boxing world rejoiced because, to his credit and to his point, PBC did box him out for many, many years. But the part of the story they always, the part of the story that Terence Crawford always leaves out is that Terence Crawford was getting paid handsomely by Top Rank. And as many of the Earl Spence fans pointed out back in those days, you know, there were opportunities where Terence Crawford could have left Top Rank and Bob Arum, but why did he sign an extension? Why didn't he leave? Why did he go to PBC a little bit earlier when to try and get the Spence fight? And the reason for that, guys, is because Terence Crawford was getting paid a lot of money. You understand? Bob Arum paid him a minimum. He had a minimum guarantee of $5.5 million to fight a very shot to pieces, piss poor Amir Khan on pay-per-view at the Garden in a fight that didn't even really draw like that, right? Also, same year, later on that year, he fought Mean Machine Kavaluskas for $4 million. You understand? So he didn't leave Top Rank because he was getting paid handsomely. And Bob Arum, who was vilified, you know, because he said that Terence Crawford was a guy that they lost money on every fight they ever promoted for him. And that's not, he's not wrong. Bob Arum is not wrong. Every fight Terence Crawford ever had, they lost money on. And the reason why they lost money on him was because he had high guarantees. Terence Crawford went on this whole rant about, you know, fighters like from yesteryear, like De La Hoya and PACQUIAO, and how they looked at it as greater than him because they fought higher name, higher profile opponents. How about this? Here's something that maybe Terence Crawford and his fans may want to consider when talking about his career and how things have played out and why he's perceived the way he is. Terence Crawford might actually be looked at better than some of those guys he's comparing himself to if he fought more than once a year. You talking about De La Hoya, you talking about Manny PACQUIAO. Those are guys that fought, you know, 2, 3, 4 times a year. You didn't fight that many times. Terence Crawford never fought that many times per year because he felt like he didn't need to. Because Top Rank, you know, for all the talk about Top Rank being racist, Top Rank not promoting black fighters, Top Rank not doing right by, you know, Terence Crawford. I mean, he seemed pretty content to get his $5.5 million when he fought Amir Khan. He seemed pretty content to fight once a year and getting his $4 million when he was fighting Mean Machine, right? And that's why Terence Crawford, every single year since 2019, he's only fought once a year. 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025, we've only seen Terence Crawford once. So you can sit here and you can complain about, you know, some of the fighters from yesteryear, and you know what? You can feel like you're better than them because you're a great fighter and you're one of the most skilled fighters we've ever seen. But a big reason why those guys are looked at to be greater than you is because not only do they fight bigger names, but they fought more often. You only fight once a year, so make of that what you will. So Terence Crawford's all pissy and butthurt because the WBC decided to strip him. You know, they decided to take away his belt because he refused to pay his sanctioning fees, right? But, you know, he points out a lot of hypocrisies and inconsistencies, and you know what? He's not wrong about those. The WBC is not, you know, this, you know, consistent organization. We know that the WBC doesn't, you know, treat fighters the same. We know the WBC has their flaws, right? But what we're not going to do is devalue the WBC and their place in boxing history. That belt, all of our boxing heroes, I don't care if it's Roy Jones, I don't care if it's Salvador Sanchez, I don't care if it's Sugar Ray Leonard, all of our boxing heroes wore that belt, and that belt made a lot of men throughout the course of boxing history multi-millionaires. You understand? So just because Terence Crawford has some newfound clout and he feels a certain way and he's on top of the world right now, that doesn't change history. You understand? That belt means something. When fighters deal with sanctioning bodies, you know, as a fighter, you are an independent contractor. Every fighter gets a 1099 at the end of the year for the taxes, right? And so a fighter is a business, and sanctioning bodies are equally a business. And when the fighter and the sanctioning body agree to participate in an event, you know, they're doing business together, right? They are in mutual agreement. So Terence can have his feelings about the WBC and the sanctioning fees and maybe some of their business practices, but when you fight for their title, you are under their rules. So if you don't agree with their rules and how they do things, then you know what you do? You do what Floyd Mayweather did for a long time. You know, Mayweather got to a point where he became so big that he would vacate titles all the time. He would get, you know, he wouldn't pay sanctioning fees. They'd strip him, and he would just only fight for one belt, right? And that's why he never became undisputed, because Floyd Mayweather like, there are so many reasons why I think Terence Crawford is not even close to Floyd. I don't care how many times he goes undisputed. He's not Floyd Mayweather. But one of the reasons why he'll never be Floyd is because he's not as smart as Floyd inside or outside the ring, especially not outside the ring. Floyd Mayweather understands the whole fight game, the whole chessboard, and he mastered it. So that's why, to me, he's got a pretty damn great case for being the best fighter of all time. You know, Floyd Mayweather understands that when you deal with these sanctioning bodies, they are necessary for the majority of your career. Sanctioning bodies will matter because it's a trade-off. As a fighter, you start off, you come up, you don't really have a name, you don't really have notoriety, you don't have clout. These belts give you the opportunity to participate in fights and events that will get you the notoriety and profile and ultimately the money that you desire. And just so long as you go in the ring and you keep kicking ass and taking names like Mayweather did, like Terrance has done, you get to a point and you graduate to a point where now your name outweighs the belt, and now you can move and not pay sanctioning fees because now people are now engaged in your career. But you don't get to that place. You don't get to that level of notoriety and clout in boxing if these belts don't, you know, hold value. You understand? So you need these belts. They're necessary. And I feel like Terence Crawford, and people may not like when I say this, but I got to keep it a spade. I feel like he forgot where he came from, and I feel like he forgot where he was as a fighter. Because as you guys saw in the beginning, you know, people that are really involved in this fight game, like, look at Mike Altamara. You know, a lot of you guys out there in the boxing world, you may not know who Mike Altamara is, but he's a big-time mover and shaker in this boxing game. Mike Altamara has managed like 4 or 5 world champions, guys like Isaac Dogbe, Fumulele Kafu, you know, a lot of the guys from South Africa, right? But equally, Mike Altamara is used as one of Top Rank Boxing's primary talent scouts. So Top Rank uses Mike to go to the Olympics. They started doing this in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, scouting talent. And they used Mike to scout talent to sign fighters. And Mike said, because Mike was an understudy of who? Mike Altamara was an understudy, and he was mentored by Terence Crawford's manager, which is arguably the best manager in modern box history, Cameron Duncan. And so he was around. He knows what the perception was of Crawford from the powers that be before Crawford became, before he, you know, who he is now, who we know him to be now as one of the greatest fighters of our era, any era, right? And he said these promoters, they didn't really care for Crawford like that. Like, they were more interested in signing the Mikey Garcias of the world and Brandon Rios, because they didn't feel like a guy from Omaha, Nebraska could really make it at the top level of boxing. And to their point, this is what I'm saying. This is why these belt organizations do matter, because it gives fighters from small towns like Omaha, Nebraska, who aren't a boxing hotbed, that, you know, where fighters don't really make it. Let's be real. Before Terence Crawford became world champion, do you guys even know what the biggest fight in Omaha was before Terence Crawford? Before Crawford fought like Gamboa on HBO, biggest fight in Omaha was when I believe it was Joe Frazier versus Ron Stander. I believe it was Frazier that fought. I could be wrong, but it was Ron Stander. Ron Stander was probably the most like notable fighter to come out of Omaha before Terence Crawford, and he was like a nothing heavyweight contender. He never really won shit. So that's what I'm saying. We can shit on these sanctioning bodies all we want, but Terence Crawford was not given a proper chance by the belt organizations to really. He wasn't given a proper chance by the promoters, I should say, my bad. He wasn't given a chance by the promoters to just sign as a great talent and be taking the right fight to the right time. No, he had to fight on Brandon Rios undercards. He was getting paid nothing. But you know what? You know what raised Terence Crawford's profile in the sport? You know what raised his pay grade? You want to know what raised, you know, just everything about him, his name? It was one of them belts. So my thing is this: Terence Crawford is not. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't sit here and say the belts don't mean shit, because if the belts don't mean shit, then going undisputed doesn't mean shit. And if going undisputed doesn't mean shit, then why are you pound for pound number one? Straight up. Why do you get paid $5 million if going undisputed doesn't mean shit? You know, Terence Crawford is just being used. Straight up, he's being used. And not only did he sell out our country to the Saudi Arabian government, that's been discussed. We already beat that like a dead horse here on True School Sports. Not only did he sell out America to the Saudi Arabian government and Turkey Al Sheikh and Mohammed bin Salman and all them guys, but what he doesn't realize is, and that's what I'm saying, Terence Crawford is selfish and he forgot where he came from. He's selling out all these young fighters who he claims to care about, you know, on the come up, that are trying to make something of themselves in this fight game. He's selling them out because we just had today Lawrence Epstein. We had Lawrence Epstein, one of the top guys at UFC on UFC in the UFC organization. We had Lawrence Epstein today on Capitol Hill talking to Congress, talking about, because they asked him, they said, for the UBO, for Zuffa boxing, for this new structure of the sport, you know, do you have a minimum investment, minimum amount of money that you can talk about investing into the fighters and as far as revenue? And he was very non-committal. He was very, like, you know, just wasn't too encouraging. My thing is, like, we've already heard about Dana White, Zuffa Boxing, and their plans to go ahead and, you know, put pay restrictions, right? So the belts and this system that has allowed Terence Crawford to get paid $5.5 million to fight a washed Amir Khan in front of a non-sold out Madison Square Garden crowd, that's like, he's destroying the very thing that made him. And he's destroying the very thing that made even his little brother Shakur Stevenson a multi-millionaire, and has a chance to make, you know, any young fighter who's good enough and has it within their soul to train hard and win the right fights and, you know, be one of the best fighters in the sport. He's destroying the very thing that's made a lot of men multi-millionaires. He forgot where he came from. Sanctioning bodies are not squeaky clean by any means. I'm not sitting here saying the WBC is holier than thou. You know, the WBC has done a lot of corrupt shit over the years, but to sit here and say the WBC doesn't mean anything and the belt doesn't mean anything to Terence Crawford's career, when, you know, he beat Victor Postal. Victor Postal was a WBC 140-pound champion. That was one of the very key fights in the early parts of Crawford's career that got him to where he's at. You know, without Postal having that belt, Postal's not Postal, you know? You understand? For the majority of fighters, until you graduate to the level of being a superstar, you know, you're not bigger than the belts. You know, it's only a handful of fighters that ever get the opportunity to become bigger than the belts. You know, your Roy Jones, your Mayweather, your Pacquiao's, and now I guess you could say Bud. He's graduated to that level now where he's not bigger than the belts. But for like 99.9% of fighters, you will never graduate past being bigger than the belts. So Crawford, congratulations. You have now gotten to a level where you don't need the belts because you are now a real superstar of the sport. But let's not sit here and act like, you know, the WBC didn't mean anything in your career. You know, I like Terence Crawford, guys. Like, I'm a huge Terence Crawford fan, and nobody can tell me otherwise. I mean, Terence Crawford was a guy that I wanted to see fight Manny PACQUIAO, so much so to the point that I stopped what I was doing in 2016 to press Pacquiao's advisor about it, as you guys saw. You know, but it gets to a point where it's like, you got to have accountability. You didn't get a lot of things early in your career because you didn't do everything you could in your power to do that. Straight up, the fight game in the professionals is a business. So if you have contempt for the media, if you're, you know, not really trying to, you know, give good interviews or anything like that, then you're not gonna get everything you can out the sport. And it is what it is. You know, he took care of his job inside the ring, and that's why ultimately, like, he wound up becoming who he became. But to sit here and try to rewrite history because you're in your feelings because the WBC stripped you and you don't like it, well, hey, too bad. That's life. If you didn't like it, if you knew the WBC was gonna be on some fuck shit, if you always had this feeling of contempt for the belts, then guess what? Do what Floyd Mayweather did. Mayweather, there were times when Mayweather could have fought for undisputed. You know what he'd do? He'd drop the belts, he wouldn't pay the sanctioning fees, and he would go on about his business. He didn't care about undisputed because guess what? He knew he was bigger than the belts. He knew that he knew in his soul that he was the best fighter in the world. And truth be told, I don't think Terence Crawford, even with everything Terence Crawford has accomplished in boxing, with how great we all know he is and how great he's proven to be, I don't think he really believes in his soul at the end of the day that he's the best fighter in the world. I don't. Because if you're really the best fighter in the world, you get to a place where you're like, you know what? I know I'm that guy. You don't need to tell me, you know? So yeah, those are my thoughts on Terence Crawford and just the whole WBC situation. He is right. I will give him this. Like, they didn't strip Canelo for years. But you know what? At that level, like anything in life, there's trade-offs. Canelo played the game. And part of the game is, hey, Canelo paid his sanctioning fees. So the WBC was willing to give him leeway, right? Now, does it make it right? No, I'm not saying it's right. But if you're in the game, know the rules of the game, and use it to your advantage. And Terence Crawford is whining about rules and things that have gone on like this years before he even said this. You know, I'm going on Twitter, I'm going on social media, I'm seeing a lot of you Terence Crawford dick suckers and pom-pom wavers. I'm seeing a lot of you guys make out Terence Crawford to be some sort of revolutionary. And truth be told, he's no revolutionary. Like, Miguel Cotto made these same comments about the WBC when he won the belt off of Sergio Martinez. They wanted him to pay a $300,000 sanctioning fee before he fought Canelo Alvarez. He said, no, I'm not going to pay that sanctioning fee. I'll choose to keep that money in my bank account. And that's what it was. And he moved on, you know, and he said that same thing as Terrence, but like, did y'all make Miguel Cotto out to be some revolutionary? No, you didn't. You can say Miguel Cotto is a great fighter from Puerto Rico, and he's going to go to the Hall of Fame, and you watched and you enjoyed the Canelo Cotto fight, and a lot of you guys bought it on pay-per-view because it did very well at the box office. That's what it was, right? So he's not saying anything new, and the WBC isn't doing anything differently. Like, they've always had high-ass sanctioning fees, but as the saying goes, it costs to be the boss. So if you didn't want to pay those sanctioning fees, if those belts didn't mean anything, then you shouldn't have fought for them. And let's keep it a spade. Let's keep it 100. Turkey Al-Sheikh, is he gonna pay you or Canelo Alvarez that same amount of money if it's not for undisputed? Because at the end of the day, especially in the fight game at the high level, perception is reality. And the perception, when a fight is for undisputed and it's on TV, it automatically raises the value of the fight. Doesn't matter if it's a mega fight like Canelo Alvarez and Crawford, or a lesser fight like a Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez. If the words undisputed are involved and the fight is for undisputed, the networks like that. The networks are willing to pay more money, you know, and all that stuff. So it only benefits. You think Netflix? Let's be real, guys. Do you really think Netflix televises Crawford Canelo and Crawford Canelo are able to be paid handsomely if all the belts aren't involved? No. So guys, Terence Crawford is full of shit, and you know he's devaluing everything he accomplished himself. He talks about a lot of the time. He talks about, oh, the media doesn't want to give me my credit. You don't want to give yourself credit because you're devaluing all the things that made you one of the biggest names in boxing. You're discrediting yourself by discrediting the WBC and all those sanctioning belts. So look, if it makes you feel better, you know, be part of trying to get rid of the sanctioning bodies. Devalue the sanctioning bodies, but it don't change history. It don't change that those belts are what helped get you in the position to become a multi-millionaire and have that, you know, have all the nice things you have in your life, you know. So I'll leave it at that, guys. I don't have any hatred towards Terence Crawford. He's a great fighter. I've enjoyed his career. I've been to a couple of his fights. But he's a miserable guy. He can't just be happy for what he's accomplished. He has to bring up old stuff. Like he proved a lot of people, myself included, wrong in the Canelo fight. And he can't just be happy with that. No, he has to shit on. He has to bring up all these old things that are not relevant anymore. And nobody's saying those things about you anymore. And a lot of people are saying that you could beat Floyd, which to me I think is ridiculous. You're not beating Floyd at any weight class, ever in history. So, that being said, you know, it's never enough. Like for Terrence, he'll always say that's never that it's never enough for the critics, but it sounds like he's never enough for his own self. So I'll leave it at that. Terence Crawford was over there moaning on Twitter about how, you know, people say he can't sell and how he would lose money and he wasn't a star, right? And really and truthfully, like he went on about Canelo Alvarez and how Canelo Alvarez never sold as many tickets as he did without him. And bro, are you dumb? Are you stupid, or are you dumb, Terrence? Canelo Alvarez, like I'm no Canelo Alvarez fan. Anybody who knows my history knows I've been known as a world-class Canelo hater, you know. But one thing Canelo Alvarez never needed anybody for, especially Terence Crawford, was selling tickets. He's been doing that forever. Before he fought Terence Crawford, about 4 years before he fought Terence Crawford, he sold out the Cowboy Stadium. Not sold it out, but he sold 73,000 tickets. 73,000 plus tickets he sold at Cowboy Stadium. And it was fighting a British fighter, fighting Billy Joe Saunders, very much during the pandemic, so Brits couldn't even travel to America. It was all Mexican people and Mexican-American people in that crowd. So he never needed Terence Crawford to sell those tickets, all right? Terence needed Canelo to get on this new level he's on now. That's the truth. Canelo Alvarez broke the American record for indoor attendance at a fight. You know, 73,000. The previous record was Muhammad Ali in the Leon Spinks rematch. He broke that record. So he never needed Terence for anything. Terence is delusional. And as far as like Terence Crawford and Manny PACQUIAO, you know, I talked about that a lot here on True School Sports over the years because I'm a big fan of Terence Crawford. I'm a big fan of Manny PACQUIAO. They're great fighters, and I wanted to see that fight, you know, back in the day. And I remember, as you guys saw in the beginning of the, you know, in this video, I pressed Manny Pacquiao's advisor, Michael Cotto, in 2016. I went to the LAX airport for the Manny Pacquiao grand arrival, and Michael Cotto was there, Manny Pacquiao's advisor, and I pressed him. I said, "Hey man, like you made this Jesse Vargas fight. Why didn't you make the Terence Crawford fight?" And he said pretty much that Terence Crawford didn't have a style that was good for Manny Pacquiao and all that blase, right? So yeah, to a degree, I agree. I do think Terence, there is some truth in what Terence is saying. I think Terence was able, I think Top Rank and Bob Arum did steer Manny Pacquiao away from Terence Crawford. It's obvious. His own advisor said that pretty much, I'm not interested in that fight. We try to get in the fight Adrian Broner. You know, we want a style that's entertaining for the fans, which is, you know, it's not, you know, Terence Crawford's not one of those fighters. Terence Crawford's very entertaining. He comes to fight and deliver knockouts and excitement to the sport. That's why he's so loved by everybody. But they didn't want, Pacquiao's handlers were taking Terence another direction. But Terence also had a role to play in this. Let's be honest. Terence had a role to play in this because for years, Terence Crawford has said that, you know, he don't like the media. The media is the enemy. Fuck the media. He's always had this chip on his shoulder against the media. Well, guess what? Because Terence Crawford wasn't really willing in his early years, he wasn't really willing to promote himself and try to win over the media. It didn't allow him to be the biggest commercial star that he could have been earlier in his career. You know, Terence is a jokester. He likes to have fun. If you ever see Terence around people, you know, if you ever watch like any interviews where he's hanging around his friends, he jokes around. He has fun. He plays jokes. But then when he's, you know, doing these interviews, he has like a bland personality, and he's really just kind of like, he does these interviews with a lot of contempt for the media. So my thing is, when you're at that top level, it's not just about the fights. Dealing with the media is part of your job, and if you're able to handle that part of your job the right way, you know, and maximize that part of your job, it's going to put you in line for other opportunities. So yeah, that's why that's part of the reason why a guy like Michael Cotto, who's Pacquiao's advisor, would look at an Adrian Broner over Terence Crawford. First of all, at that point in time in 2016, Broner was more accomplished than Terence Crawford, and Broner at that time was definitely much bigger commercially than Terence Crawford. So that's why, and yes, you could say Broner is a clown, and you know Crawford didn't want to act like that, but I'm not telling Crawford to act like a clown. What I'm saying is, use the media to your advantage. Floyd Mayweather got to a point where he understood, okay, I don't care if the media writes anything good about me or bad about me, as long as you write about me. He used to always say that. I don't care if you write anything good about me or bad about me, as long as you write about me, right? Thank you to the media. And he understood the value of media to his career, and he played the media the right way to get what he wanted out of the sport. And Terrence didn't understand that when he was in his younger years, and it hurt his commercial value. You understand? So, really and truthfully, Terence Crawford played just as big a role in not getting the Manny PACQUIAO fight as Top Rank did. That's why I stand on that. The last thing I'll address that Terence Crawford said in his rant is that the Ring magazine is better and somehow supersedes all the other belts. Now, look, for a long time as a younger boxing fan and reporter, I used to really believe that shit. Like I used to really believe that the Ring magazine belt was somehow superior to all the other belts, because generally speaking, when a fighter wins that Ring magazine belt, it normally means they beat, you know, the other best guy in the division. So it is a great belt to have, but I look at it as no different than what Terence Crawford said the WBC was. I look at it as an extra trophy, no better, no less. Why? Because for all the corrupt shit that the WBC has done, guess what? Ring magazine ain't squeaky clean either. Ring magazine, 1977, the United States Boxing Championships. You know, Don King, ABC, Ring magazine. They staged a tournament. You know, they find out that the rankings and the fighters' records in the rankings were compromised, and later on, in 1977, the tournament gets canceled. Right. So Ring magazine has been involved in some pretty foul corruption, going back to the 70s, that you can Google it up. If you don't believe me, go Google up Ring magazine United States Championships, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You know, fast forward, you know, 30, 40 some odd years, Golden Boy Promotions buys Ring magazine, and we know that Golden Boy Promotions having a piece of Ring magazine has always led to not the best rankings. You know, you understand? So there's that. And then now Turkey Al Sheikh has bought Ring magazine, and now Ring magazine is basically a propaganda machine for whatever Turkey wants to push out there into the boxing ecosystem. You understand? So no, I'm gonna go against the grain. I don't think Ring magazine is the best belt. I think it's a cool belt to have. I think if you have, what my view of the Ring magazine belt is that if you have all the other belts and you are undisputed, I feel like to have that belt on top, it just adds to your legacy and adds to your cachet. I don't think it's no better nor worse than the other sanctioning bodies, because other sanctioning Ring magazine, just like the sanctioning bodies, has been corrupted, has been compromised. You understand? And if I could just be ever so blunt and transparent, it's a fucking magazine. It's a magazine, like, so it's no different, it's no better, you know? Just because the Ring magazine suits what Terence Crawford likes, don't make it no better than no other belt. But I'll leave it at that, guys. Those are my thoughts on Terence Crawford's you know, comments and complaints of him crying about everything. And you know, and I'll be at the Lamont Roach Isaac Cruz weigh-in today, so stay tuned for more coverage, and yeah, God bless.
Thank you for watching True School Sports.
Thank you for watching another video on the untouchable True School Sports empire, the home of boxing. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, guys, so help us keep being great. Help us keep pushing out that real boxing content for the fine folks all around the world. And make sure you jab, you hook, you Mike Tyson, you Mayweather that subscribe button. Pops, show them how do they got to hit the subscribe button. Pop, pop, pop.